guys, welcome back to the KinderWorks Sofa series.
As you know, within this series, we are focusing on having real, honest and raw conversations on important topics.
And today we have with us Mike Knowles, who's certainly got some interesting stories to share with us. Welcome, Mike.
Hello.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
That is okay. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a really cool set. And yeah, so excited to talk about work and being kind.
Glad you like it. So in terms of where to kick off then, so I know you and I have spoken in the past and I find a few of your stories so inspiring and can relate to them in some way.
Yeah.
I know we've spoken about the unconventional path that you've taken, and that's always stuck with me because I never went to university, and many people think I should have. Everyone has their own opinion. I was MD at 25. A lot of people think that's unconventional and rather strange. And I've always been passionate about proving to people that you don't need to do the dumb thing and go on that path that you're always told to through your education. What are your experiences with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, just even your story alone is, it's been really inspirational for other members of the team, not only myself, but other members of the team. I know really appreciate your story and my story. So my story really, and hopefully none of the clients get upset about my education, but I dropped out of school when I dropped out of school when I was 15. I left school with 2 GCSEs, just maths and English at a C, which was far below what I was kind of predicted to get and what I wanted to get. At that stage of my life, I didn't really have a plan. I didn't know what I wanted to do, which is probably part of the reason of that. I didn't know that I needed certain grades to take the next step at college or to get into a university. So that the motivation in that sense probably wasn't there at that time. And yeah, I kind of dropped out of school and instantly started working. I started as a cleaner. That was my first job. I was cleaning a school, a primary school actually. And then I kind of moved on into media. I was always interested in social media, just kind of my generation and my age. Social media was kind of an upcoming thing. MSN, MySpace, AOL, all those things.
All the joys.
All those,
Back in the day.
All those fun ones. So I was always interested in it. And I think with that, it's, anything that's digital, you can teach yourself, you can learn, you can try it out. There's so many videos online, so there's no real excuse at that point to not know things. And yeah, I kind of luckily, as things you kind of fall on your feet to some degree, but I kind of went in and out of the system. Was on job seekers for a long time, which didn't really help me an awful lot because they're just trying to push you to do a certain job, and I was like, I can't do those. And I got lucky enough to get a voluntary role at a magazine actually, which kind of ended up really being my first kind of real media job. And from there I volunteered for about a year and then put together a PowerPoint presentation, which I think I still have, but if I went back and look at it now, it'd be terrible, on why the magazine should be using social media and how I could help them do that. And then they gave me a job, and kind of, I guess you could say the rest is history. So yeah, I kind of started out with almost nothing and just taught myself as much as I could. And yeah, it's kind of led to where I'm now.
I love it. And I think what stands out to me the most is breaking that stereotype. So obviously you work with a much wider team at KVA, and I work with you, privileged enough to work with you for many years now. And within the company, you are relied on so much as a data expert, a strategic expert. You add exceptional value to all of our clients. And if anyone said, predict Mike's background, predict the journey he's been on, not one person would say that and be able to predict the story that you've just told. And what I find so inspiring is the ability to then encourage others that they might have also had struggles and challenges and not gone through the conventional path, but that you can achieve anything. You don't need to be limited to achieving X, Y, and Z, otherwise you can't go on and do this. You are absolutely incredible to work with and such a valued member of the team. And why should that be defined by what grades or what courses you've been on?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's I guess what you could say is there's kind of societal norms where people expect you to do certain things in certain ways, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way to do it. It doesn't mean it's the right way for every individual person to do it. my story is my story, and there'll be people that are similar to me. There'll be people that have a completely different story, but are at the moment in a similar situation. There'll be kids that are 16, 17, waiting for their GCSE results that will be their predicted grades because they haven't been able to do their actual exams, and they might be really nervous about that. And I guess at that time it's kind of almost the end of the world if you don't get the grades that you want.
The pressure put on
Exactly.
people is so debilitating, and it doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, and I mean that's just the difference between school and work, and that's why I kind of thrive at work, because you're given the opportunity to kind of fail and learn, whereas at school you just have to learn. You can't fail. If you fail an exam, that's you're not getting to the next step. Whereas at work, if you fail, then you've probably learned something anyway, and you'll do it better the next time.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm going to be really honest as well, because I didn't know until recently that you had dropped out of school at 15, and that's because on CVs, I never, ever, ever look at grades and look at education, because yes, education's important, and when we're looking at roles like a senior science writer, yes, obviously you have to have a science degree and a PhD and and various other qualifications, but for digital marketing, and certainly in the digital era, we can self-teach ourselves a lot. And yeah, it kind of doesn't matter what is on that bit of paper, because you can just go and you can just teach yourself whatever you want, and it's all about your mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'm sure times have changed now, but back when I would have been going to university, a marketing degree wouldn't have taught me about digital marketing. It just wouldn't. It wasn't one of the fundamentals back then, whereas now I'm sure it is. So to kind of get where I was and the leapfrog ahead of other people, teaching myself was the way I had to do it, and kind of learning as you go.
I think digital moves so quickly as well, doesn't it? That what you learn in a certain 3-year bracket when you're at university or doing a course, actually times have changed, and by the time you get out and you're actually putting it into practice, you've almost missed 3 years of how the industry have progressed, because you're doing the regimented course content that is fixed from years before that. So you're almost on the back foot. Whereas I feel like when you get out there and you get that practical work experience, you're living it, you're breathing it, and you can then expand on that and actually get ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think almost everyone will say, you learn more doing a job for a year than you would doing 4 years of university. That's just the way it is. But I guess, for that to be successful, you do need to be in an environment where you're given the ability to learn, and given the ability to fail at things, because that's natural, that's a given. No one's born knowing what to do. No one's born being perfect at anything. Everyone at some point has to learn. I'm sure Lewis Hamilton's lost a few races when he was younger and probably thought it was the end of the world. But he's doing all right for himself now, as I'm sure many other people are. So yeah, it's just about having that kind of support as well around you to be able to do it.
100%. And I think there's so many different styles that people need to learn through, and the majority of people, in my opinion, aren't best suited to sitting in a classroom and doing 3 or 4 years at university. I know when it came to me being in that situation, I was supposed to go to university, everyone was expecting me to go, I'd got my place, and I hadn't even really thought about it because it was just the path I was told to follow. And then it came to a couple of weeks before I was due to go, and I thought, well, I've worked all through the summer, and why do I now want to stop working to go back to a classroom? Why do I want to practice doing life when I can actually do life? And I felt so impatient that I would have been demoralised and demotivated by feeling like I had to step back and go and sit in a classroom again. So it's different for every person, and it's important everyone knows that's okay. And you might not be naturally good at exams. So many people who are so clever, so intelligent, so capable aren't good at taking exams, but why should that prove their ability in life? It shouldn't.
It doesn't.
And that's why I think it's important for all leaders and management teams and everyone who even has a company to stop judging individuals by the things that aren't important. You're one of our most valuable team members and have got the most colourful journey towards getting to where you are now, but it just shouldn't be looked at in any other way than a positive, in my opinion.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And yeah, it's a capability to do a job, it's not necessarily what's on paper. There's a lot more things than just being able to learn. Being able to learn is to be able to retain information. But when you're working, you're dealing with people, you're, having to learn things, you've got to have the right attitude. So there's a lot more to it, and being successful and having a successful career than just being, I guess, paper smart.
Definitely.
That's not to say that if you're at school that you shouldn't still try hard and do as
Just
well as you
caveat
can.
yourself.
yeah.
Yeah, just to say, but I guess the point is that, if anyone is in that situation, then, hopefully don't be too worried. I know it sucks at the time, and it sucks for me, but, it's how diamonds are made with a bit of pressure, right? So
True. It's about giving people a chance, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And what I've found to be so important, and what you taught me, is that just give people a chance. Don't prejudge based on anything, and just because someone might be young or someone might not have that past experience or qualification, it doesn't mean they're going to be any less capable than someone that meets that perfect picture. So open opportunities.
Exactly.
It will lead to great things.
It will do. So talk to us a bit, Mike, about why, I know there was some reasons as to why you dropped out of school when you were 15.
Yep.
What were the kind of reasons behind that?
So I got on quite well at school. Like, I was quite academic. I had a lot of friends, so it was no issue around that. I just kind of towards when I was 13, 14, and to be honest, ever since I was young, I can remember now struggling with anxiety. So the reason in a nutshell is due to anxiety. When you look back on things with hindsight, it's really easy to spot, but I remember, when I'd be going to hockey tournaments or football tournaments, and I'd just be getting so incredibly nervous and anxious that I just wanted to turn around and go home. But obviously, when you're that young, your parents will force you through, which is kind of what you need to do sometimes. But as soon as I got into secondary school, I kind of understood the law, understood the bounds, understood what I could and couldn't do. And at that point, if I didn't want to be at school, then I would end up not being there. And then unfortunately, with anxiety, that causes it to grow and to grow and to grow, to the point of where I just wasn't attending enough. So I was taken out of school, and I did a bit of home education, but by that point, I'd already missed about a year and a half worth of schooling. So I was originally going to do science as well, but just didn't have time to do that, to do an entire GCSE, and I had like 6 months to do it. So I just did maths and English. So yeah, it was all around anxiety, really. So thankfully, and again, I haven't until more recently, because I'm twice as old as I was back then when it started. Until more recently, I haven't really spoken about it much because, again, there's always that stigma around it, and especially as a young male, and if you're trying to kind of move into, the workplace, that if you're anxious, and I remember some original job interviews I went for, and I felt like I did well, and I'd always been really honest about my anxiety and saying, look, there's going to be some days where I'm going to really struggle to get into the office, or and I think that really went against me. So me being honest and talking about it just kind of ended up me not getting the job. The first interview that I went to, where I was confident enough, I was like, I'm not going to mention it. You know what? I'm not going to mention it. I think I can deal with it, and then I got that job. So maybe that's just confirmation bias, and it's just a complete coincidence. But that was my experience with it.
Yeah, and I think sadly that's a lot of people's experience, isn't it? That there's these kind of negative perceptions around anxiety, around mental health, around depression, and it's just not spoken about enough. And I think, over lockdown, what we've seen is companies they've been forced to change practice. So everyone's been working flexibly, working remotely. But I think that's less about the individual's need, and that's more about the company's need or the government's need to lock everybody down. Whereas what we need to do is talk about these issues and allow everybody to be individuals, and everyone should feel happy and comfortable to go to anybody in their organisation and say, I'm really struggling with this, I need some help, and this is how, it will help me to be able to work from home, it will help me to be able to choose my own hours. And look at you now. I mean, we were just discussing off air that you went from, not barely leaving the house, and when you joined KVA within a short period of time, you'd come on holiday with us to St. Lucia, you'd been to Vegas to a client meeting. I mean, tell us a bit about that experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, part of the anxiety, and I guess my family, like they always would rather holiday in the UK. And personally, when I was younger, I had no interest in going abroad because that was really scary. So I essentially had never been outside of the UK. And the first time I did was with KVA on a holiday to St. Lucia. And obviously at that point, that was still a big step and a milestone, right? It's the first time I've been somewhere that's quite far. It's away from home. There's still anxiety around that, but you know, I obviously felt confident enough to do it. But it's, you know, things like that you just, when you're in the depth of the anxiety and it's consuming you, you just don't think that you can get out and you can do that. As I always say, I've been fortunate where, you know, a lot of times anxiety and depression have been linked, or, you know, if you experience one, you probably experience the other. I've always felt quite lucky in the sense that I don't think I've ever been depressed. It's always just been anxiety. So I've always kept positive and believed that I'm going to get there sometime. But yeah, as I say, going to Vegas to client meetings and to attend a massive summit with thousands of people, I mean, that's overwhelming for anyone, really.
It was very hectic.
That's amazing. What an achievement. I mean, that's incredible. Have you got any advice for other people who may be watching who are in a similar position, who are struggling with anxiety at the moment? Any kind of practical advice on how you've been able to help overcome that?
So I think the thing with anxiety, the thing that sucks to hear, and I had to hear it quite a lot of times before it kind of sunk in, and it was David Linus, who was my psychologist at the time, kind of just told me, it was like, well, are you going to do anything? I was like, well, I don't know. It's like, well, do you want to be like this forever? It's like, no, not particularly. It's like, well, you better do something. And with anxiety, it is really, if you can do something, it's going to be better than nothing. Anxiety is a snowball. If you let it grow, it will keep growing and it will keep getting worse. You do just have to try and take the small wins. And that's, you know, keeping in perspective to not worry too much about failure. So a big thing for me was that stopped me progressing quicker was that I was scared of failing. So I wouldn't want to go to the shops because what if I try to go and I get really anxious and I have to go home, then I'm going to feel even worse. And so I was scared to try to fail and then feel worse in myself. But you just have to try. You genuinely have to take that literal first step. Unfortunately there's no real shortcuts to anxiety, and it's a really horrible thing, and it affects everybody differently. So, you know, it's the one bit of advice is just go, try.
You are such an inspiration, honestly, and talking about those first few steps of going out to the shops and just trying to take that first step, to you now here publicly talking about it, doing an absolutely amazing job and delivering exceptional work when no one would even predict that that's the struggle that you have and have had in the past. And for me, it's the best example of what can be achieved. And I think you telling your story is so brave for the positive impact, which you're definitely going to have on so many other people out there.
Yeah, I hope so. I would say even if just one person watches it and it makes a difference, then that's been, you know, effort and time well spent. And yeah, I think, you know, it is just one of those things where you have to give it a go, and you never know what's going to happen, really. But you've got to take that step to progress, really.
Is there any advice that you'd kind of give to companies, to employers, to line managers, to anybody really, as to how they could help people within their team who might be suffering with anxiety, and whether that's COVID related or whether that is a kind of longer term issue?
So I think one thing, I guess, to understand is that sometimes if someone's feeling very anxious, is that they will want to say no, and oftentimes an anxious person will you know, try to kind of fall back on themselves, and it's really trying to understand where the line is of where you can help to push somebody, and that is a really tricky thing, because if you just let someone that's anxious kind of crawl back into themselves and fall back and avoid it completely, then they'll probably end up feeling worse. But there's also a line of not pushing them too much. So the advice would be to just try and encourage people, obviously, as gently as possible, and trying to identify the push point of where someone just needs to go over the cliff. Like, at a certain point, you've just got to take the jump, and sometimes having someone to help push you to do that is what you need.
And pack a parachute on someone's back.
Parachute.
You give them the support to be able to actually jump off that cliff, but they've got the support to fly.
Yeah, I say.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I mean, to this day, I still have, I guess, you know, it's one of those things through dealing with anxiety. You learn how to deal with it. You learn yourself. Like, I can recognise it in myself now. I know how I'll start to feel if I'm anxious, so then I know how to get myself out of it. Which when you just don't. But I still have little kind of ritual, not quite ritualistic things, but little things that I'll do that I know will help me feel less. Or if I am packing a bag somewhere, then I'll make sure I take certain things with me, because I know if I need them, which I often don't, then I've got them. So it's just trying to, identify what your kind of safety net is, and then try and find a way to take that with you.
So over the last year, we've obviously seen COVID force everybody into lockdown, having to work from home. How has that kind of impacted you, and what do you think the changes are that need to happen longer term within companies?
Yeah, so I mean, so you'll know that from my side, the mental health side of working from home has been an adjustment, and I think it was something that I was anxious about at the start, certainly, and my mum was even anxious because she knew that we were working from home, and it is one of those things with anxiety. If you're not kind of constantly fighting it and dealing with it, then it can build. Luckily, I'm at the point now where that doesn't happen. But even my mum was worried that, oh, you're staying at home all the time, you're not going out as much as you used to be. Are you going to be okay when you go back to work? And even I was a bit worried, like, oh God, how am I going to cope going back to the office after this? But yeah, it's just having the flexibility, and I think as we come out of lockdown and easing people back in, it's just giving people the option to go to the office, because I'm personally, I thrive in an office environment now, which is crazy to think, I wouldn't have thought that. But I love to have people to bounce off of. Creativity is people, business is people. So if you don't have that, for me, if you don't have that connection, then there's a little bit missing. So yeah, it's just having the flexibility and understanding that everyone has different needs and different wants.
Yeah. I think that's the way, that's the future, isn't it? Someone said to me the other day, how are you going to possibly track everybody when they go back to the office? How do you know who's at home and who's in the office? And my answer was, why does it matter? Because actually over the last year, everyone's proven that they can work effectively from home. Obviously, all of us have different needs, and some of us have raced back to the office and are very happy to be back, and others want to have that flexibility. To me, it doesn't matter to track somebody as to where they are, because as long as they're doing their job and clients are happy, then we're happy and everyone's happy. Yeah. So it just seems quite archaic to me to need that level of control, I guess.
Yeah, I think it will be a positive change for a lot of reasons, and I know as an agency, even before COVID, that you were quite flexible with people. If people needed to work from home because they had someone coming to the house or they had a delivery coming, then that was okay, and we had that level of trust even before COVID. But I think it will just help a lot more employers kind of understand that people can be as productive. I don't think at the moment we'll go completely office free, as some places might want to, because like I say, business is people, creativity is people, and for me, I need that kind of connection at some point to be able to do my best work.
Definitely, but it's about just doing what works best for each individual, and what works for you one week might not be what works for you the next week, and it's about knowing that's okay, and you can do whatever you need to, and you're trusted by the people around you. Yeah. So feel free.
One last question I've got, actually. Yeah. How do you feel it's impacted the culture of the team? Because obviously before COVID, a very, very tight-knit, almost family-feel team that has suddenly dispersed, and people working remotely from all over the place. How has that impacted, in your opinion, the culture?
I think overall, culture-wise, nothing has really changed for us. I mean, we still have the same values, same beliefs. It naturally has impacted the ability to just be able to have conversations with people. Things are a lot more regimented. It's you kind of feel a lot more kind of I guess like official, or that you need to be doing you need to be productive. If you pick up the phone to talk to someone, you're almost like, oh, you don't really want to just have a chit chat. It's what's the business? Like, why are you giving me a call? Whereas when you're in the office, you would just stop and have a chat about, if someone mentions a specific type of new biscuit or something, you'd kind of talk. Exactly, you would have a chat about what's good, which you obviously lose just because you have the screen is a block to some degree, and we've done our best to try and avoid that. And I'm always someone that if I am calling someone, I'll try and stop for 5 minutes and just have a chin wag, or even just sit on the call and work in the background together. Like that's what I love doing. That works quite well.
I mean, it's not the same as being across the table from someone, is it?
No, but
we're forever on the phone, aren't we? And we'll just end up stop talking, just have each other on the line and start working away. And I think even having people on Zoom chats or on webcam, it almost makes you feel like you're in it together and just helps you get through the day a little bit more.
It does for sure. Yeah, I mean, personally, I think being in the office is always going to be better, but I say times are changing. We've got other things to think about, the environment being one. We're all driving cars, getting on trains, airplanes to go to an office when maybe you don't have to. And yeah, maybe the planet will be better off if we don't. So, yeah.
I think that's the big question at the moment, isn't it? What is everyone going to do?
Yeah.
But for the meantime, I think we'll just do what makes most people happy.
Yeah.
Time to take an electric car and I'll go greener car scheme.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I still like the combustion engine at the moment, but yeah, we'll see.
Oh, Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's okay.